perhaps one of the best-kept secrets on the NASCAR Modified Tour. The driver of car number 1, Tony Hirschman, and his plans after winning Martinsville and what's in store for the 1991 season. Will he be driving in one division or will it be two? This is the Thompson Speedway, but we're not here for auto racing this time. We're here at Don Honig's, New England's largest all-automotive swap meet and flea market. This is the setting here for the Thompson International Speedway, and it might look a lot different today than it did during the summer months, because the Thompson International Speedway has hosted some of the most exciting races for the NASCAR Winston Modified Tour, the Busch Grand Nationals, and much, much more. Hello, I'm Ben Dodge, and I welcome you to another edition of Race Week. Well, as you can see, it's extremely cold here at the Thompson Speedway, but in this edition of Race Week, we're going to be taking a look at a driver who has competed here very successfully at the 5/8 mile Thompson International Speedway. He is one of the front-running drivers on the NASCAR Winston Modified Tour, and even though the people behind me are looking for deals here at the swap meet and flea market, he is one of the big deals and the big wheels of the NASCAR Modified Tour. He is perhaps the most quietest driver of them all. We'll be talking with Tony Hirschman, driver of the Vecchio number 1 on the NASCAR Winston Modified Tour, as he talks about his plans for 1991 and how the Busch Grand National Circuit looks attractive to him like it does to many other teams. Let's meet Tony Hirschman and the modified team, Vecchio Racing, and car number 1. He isn't one of the most colorful drivers, personality-wise, on the NASCAR Modified Tour, but his performance behind the wheel of a car has proved that he has all the right ingredients to be a true champion. Tony Hirschman has taken the NASCAR Modified Tour by a storm. Each and every time out, he is a contender. And when the checkered flag is out, the name Tony Hirschman is always in the record books, like his car number right up front, as car number 1 has been a factor on the NASCAR Modified Tour.
At the start of the 1990 season, many people thought that Tony Hirschman might wear the 1990 NASCAR Modified crown. But 1990 has been kind of a disappointing year for Tony Hirschman and crew. Tony, what about the 1990 season?
Well, it's been an up and down year, that's for sure. You know, we got 3 wins on the tour, but it's, you know, we win or we lose, it seems like. It's nothing really in between. We can't put together them top 5 finishes every week like we did last year, and it hurt us. You know, I got hurt there at Richmond in the beginning of the year. That took a little bit out of me. Till we come back, we come all the way back in the second in the points again. And that crash at Poconos did us in, knocked us back to 6th. We're in 5th right now. That's probably about where we're going to finish in the standings. We thought we had a real good shot at winning the points this year, and just didn't work out. You know, it's as the good a year as we had last year. We figured this year would have to be better, but you know, that's racing, and it just don't go that way every year.
Tony, people see you as a quiet guy. How would you describe yourself to the fans?
Well, I'm probably quiet, but you know, when we come to the track, we're here for business. We're coming to win races, and maybe we're a little bit too serious sometimes. You know, it puts a lot of pressure on the whole team, but we come for one thing, and that's to win races.
When the NASCAR Modified Tour went to Richmond for the first time, many people were skeptical of how the Modifieds would handle there. But you and Mike McLaughlin and Rick Fuller put on a tremendous battle until about 10 laps to go when you were involved in an accident. How did that crash mentally and physically affect you?
Well, sure, it took a little bit out of me there for a while. You know, I was hurt. I just couldn't drive the car, and it couldn't really take the chances that I should have been taking there for a few races. But we come back, we won some races after that, and that Pocono wreck again jarred me around a little bit, and it was hurting for a couple more weeks, you know. But in the last 2-3 races, I've been real strong again. We won 2 poles in a row. You know, we just had problems at Thompson with a radiator hose coming off, which I think we could have had a real good finish there, maybe even won that race. But, you know, we're sitting on a pole again at Martinsville, and we're going to give it a shot tomorrow and see what we can do.
The 2 crashes really had an effect on your year. You had moved up to second in points. How did both those crashes really dampen the season?
Well, it just got everybody down. It got me down. It got the whole crew down. You know, it cost us a lot of money to rebuild them cars to get us back on foot again. And but we got 2 cars now that are in, you know, one as quick as the other, and our team is back at the, you know, as equipment-wise as good as it's going to be. And I'm in best shape I can be now. And but like you said, our deal was we wanted to win them points this year. We're looking to move on up into the Busch class next year. How many races we're going to run yet, we're not quite sure. But, you know, we would have won that Tour title. It sure would have been a big feather in our cap, you know, to help us out.
Tony, after you were injured, you went to Nazareth and watched one of the Busch Grand National races. And you told me that you really looked at the Busch cars very, very closely. Is that when you decided this may be the way to go?
Well, Busch has been in the back of the whole team's mind for a while. But, you know, as good a year as we had on the Tour last year, we figured, well, we'll give it one more full year on the Tour, you know, try to do better. But, you know, it just didn't go that way this year. But like you said, at Nazareth, I was there. We were off for a few weeks, and while I was injured there, and I was looking around, and the cars I really got the liking to them. I really didn't pay that much attention to them before that. We'd come to Martinsville, and we were on this side of the pit, they were on the other. I never really paid that much attention as much as I did like at Nazareth, and from there on, and even this weekend here, I've been over on that side probably more as I've been on this side, but I really like the cars. You know, the cars, we went to a race car shop, Townsend. They got a car built for us, a brand new car. We're going to pick it up next weekend, and we really are looking forward to next year to giving it a try. If we only run a dozen races, whatever we can afford to run next year, we're going to try to run.
Mike McLaughlin and Mike Stefanik and yourself, a lot of modified drivers are looking at the Busch cars. Why all of a sudden?
Well, you want to move up, you got to, that's the next step, it's Busch. You know, you can't go any other way. I think Busch is the next division up. You know, it's the only way to go. Get the experience on the bigger tracks and get to run with some of the Winston Cup guys in some of the other races. And that's probably the only way you can go to move up.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Tony Hirschman as a driver?
Well, last year it probably was, probably a 9. You know, we couldn't do nothing wrong. We were almost perfect. You know, this year it's probably been a 5. It's just been an up and down year. But, you know, it's been, you know, the car's not been as good as it should have been every race. I'm not as good, you know, being injured. I wasn't up to it as good as I should have been for some of the races. That hurt both ways, you know, but we struggled a little bit in both ends this year. But like I said, last year we had a real good year, and this year just was in between.
Coming up next, we'll take a look at more than just the man behind the wheel. We'll take a look at the men behind him, Tony Vecchio Sr. and Tony Vecchio Jr., and how they keep Tony Hirschman running up front.
Wrap yourself into an Eagle cow and a bold Chief Eagle today, and we'll see you in the winner's circle.
Race of Champions of the Pocono International Raceway, Tony Hirschman piloted car number 1, the Vecchio Universal Joint Sales car, to get to the front of the field. With less than 50 laps to go, Tony Hirschman passed Satch Worley to go on to secure a victory worth $24,000, his biggest career win to date from the Pocono International Raceway.
There's a lot of good drivers on the NASCAR Winston Modified Tour, and long before Tony Hirschman became a regular, many people in New England always knew that Tony Hirschman was a very fast driver. Tony, when do you think you're going to reach your peak, or have you reached your peak in racing?
Well, I don't think you really ever reach your peak. I'd say if you get into a Winston Cup and you'd be at the top like a Dale Earnhardt or Mark Martin right now, I'd say they're at their peak, you know. But till you get to that point, I don't think you're at your peak.
Tony, you've been with the race team now for about 5 years, but what kind of relationship do you have with the Vecchio crew?
It's real close, you know. It's like a family, you know. This is the best team probably I ever worked with, and I drove for a few other owners over the years, and this one here is just real close. Everybody gets along good, you know, and that's what it takes. You know, it's hard for teams to get along. This many years is my 5th year with them, and we're looking forward to going to a 6th year next year. And it's hard to do that, you know. With other teams, it's been 2 years, 3 years, and then we were done. You know, it just fell apart. But this team here has been real close, like family. You know, everybody gets along real nice.
Yeah, Tony's worked out real well for us. Him and I seem to be able to communicate and keep the team going in the right direction, and we've excelled every year we've gotten together and raced. Tony, one thing, he's got a natural ability of handling a race car, but his biggest asset is his smoothness in a race car. He keeps the equipment running, and he keeps the tires on the car, and that's a big asset that a lot of people can't do out there. And as a car owner on my end of it, Tony really takes care of the race car. He's not hard on equipment. He doesn't wear the brakes out or anything like that, and he doesn't just go out there and just keep driving. If the temperature gauge is pegged over, he calls me and lets me make the decision. He doesn't just keep driving until it blows up. So Tony's a very smart, smooth race car driver.
The only problem about Tony was saying that 1990 wasn't as good as 1989, possibly because of the 2 wrecks that you had at Richmond and Pocono.
That's true. He had a heck of a lick he took at Richmond and Pocono and stuff like this. But overall, the year is we rebounded every time that we had a disaster like that. For example, after the Richmond thing, Tony's sitting out for 7 weeks. We came within 62 points of the lead in the Tour. So, you know, as bad as it went, we came back and rebounded. And you know, that's the thing that I guess you got to keep trying. And we didn't have as much success as we did last year, but that's the way racing is.
Yeah, I don't think you have to win that many races. You just got to be consistent. You know, the people watch, you got to be fast week in and week out. Sure, you're going to have your problems. You're not going to finish as good as you want like we did this year. But still, we've been fast. We won races, and that's what counts.
As a kid, did you grow up in a racing family?
I've kept a close eye on racing probably when I was small, and I started going to watch my uncle race back in the late 60s, early 70s at Dorney Park, and I really was there week after week watching, and one of them deals, sneak into the pits and when I could, and finally in 1974 I built my own car. It was a 55 Chevy, a late model, and I worked my way up through the late model 2 years, sportsman for 3 years, and it was 1979 before I got my first Troyer car, and I run as a small block class. Till 1980, I got my real first modified ride. But back in the early days, 74, 75, when I run the late model 55 Chevy, you know, everybody looked, well, you got to get out of that division, get into the open wheels. Now it seems like, you know, 15, 16 years later, you got to get back into the fendered cars again to get all the way to the top.
Tony, your wife and kids, naturally, they must be big race fans and big supporter of you.
They travel every race with me. We have our motor home. We travel as a family. And plus all the rest of my, you know, my father, my mother, well, she don't go to too many races. She watches them on TV, or Pocono's probably the only one that she gets to go to. But my father and all my uncles, they've been behind me all the years. They've been the force. They kept pushing me through. And, you know, we had a lot of down times when I run for myself, own my own car. You know, when we wrecked the car bad, was one of them deals like you almost saying, that's it, we had enough, we're going to quit. But they kept behind me and pushed me up through to where we're at now. And they're all here this weekend pulling for me. And, you know, I think that's with any race team like that there. It takes a family deal, affair, just like the whole team now. It's like a big family. That's why we're doing as good as we are.
A lot of drivers in any form of racing now, it seems to be a full-time. You look at Mike McLaughlin and Reggie Ruggiero. These are full-time drivers. But what about Tony Hirschman? What does Tony do for a living?
Well, I like to make racing my living, and last year we had a real good year. I could have used last year to, you know, say I made my living in racing, but this year it's been up and down. I'm self-employed. I have my own salvage yard, auto parts, and a repair shop. When I'm there, you know, to work, we're not home that much, but it takes care of the off-season when we're not racing, and you know, it depends how good we're doing. If we have a good year racing like last year, I really don't have to count on that part as much. But this year it's been up and down. We had to work a little harder at home too. It's just been an up and down year.
A lot of people look at the glamour and the travel of the modified tour or any kind of tour. When you first got into it, was that one of the drawing cards?
Well, years ago when I started racing, like I said, we didn't drive no more than a half hour from home. That was our weekly stops, you know, and that seemed far, you know. And we started traveling a little bit. When the first year I went to like Wall Stadium, I mean, that was a 2-hour ride. Everybody's saying, you're crazy, you know, what do you want to travel that far for? And now it's Pocono's the closest track to home, 45 minutes. Everything else is 4 hours or better for me to travel. Like Virginia here is 8 hours, and it's towards the end of the season it gets to be a little bit of a drag, you know. But if you have a good season, you keep looking forward to the next race. The next race, it don't really bother you that much. But this year has been a little bit up and down. You know, we had a lot of good races and bad ones, but you know, we've been struggling along, and you know, coming off of last weekend at Thompson, we won the pole there. We had a bad break with a radiator hose coming off in the race. And we come to Martinsville, the car run good right off the truck again. And, you know, we looked forward to qualifying. You know, it wasn't that we were afraid that we weren't going to qualify good. We knew we could qualify good. And it just makes it that much more interesting.
The NASCAR Winston Modified Tour ran 24 races this year from New Hampshire all the way down here to Virginia. There got to be a lot of drivers that you have an awful lot of respect for on the track for.
Oh, you do. You run with these guys week in and week out. You got to have a lot of respect for one another. You're going to get your problems, you know, racing hard. You're going to get into each other now and then, but really the guys, it's like a big family when you travel in a group like this. And right now there's probably, you know, 6 other guys in this modified tour that, you know, I just wish, you know, we could all get the big break to move up to Busch or the Winston Cup. We got, I'd say, 6 guys right now that are ready, you know, that maybe we'll never get the chance to even give it a shot, you know, and never will get to the top. But
people look at the open wheels and say, it must be really interesting running with these guys at speeds of over 100 miles an hour. What drivers, what 6 do you really respect?
Well, like you said, running that fast wheel-to-wheel, open wheels, it makes it a lot tougher than probably running a Busch car where you got the fenders to help you, you know, to guide you through them holes. But like I said, the modified tour, we got so many good guys running up front right now. They're all really respect one another, and it's hard to really, you know, to name exactly which ones that should make the move right now, but you know, it's all of them. They just got to put their own deals together and try it. You know, you stay stuck in one division too long, that's it. You're going to stay there. You won't get out.
Over the course of 5 years ago, where would you say Tony Hirschman would have been? And if they said he was going to be running in the top 3 in modified tour points, would you have been happy?
Yes, 5 years ago, you know, I was just dreamed about coming to some of these tracks and just even running there, you know, and then especially the year we had last year, winning them big races. I remember when I was small, I didn't even race. I sat in the stands and watched. It was just a dream. Never figured you'd ever get that far, you know. Now we'd run so good in the modifieds, we're going to get into the Busch division, and it's probably just, you know, we can keep going at the pace we're going. 34, 35 years old right now. You know, we got a few years left yet as a team, or myself. You know, I see guys, Harry Gant, running 50 years old, so I figure I got 15 years maybe left in me to get to the top, and if we can do Busch in the next couple of years, and maybe I'll have a shot at Winston Cup one day.
A lot of drivers have made the transition from the modified to the Busch Grand National Circuit and more. We'll be taking a commercial break next, and when we come back, we'll see if Tony Hirschman plans on running a modified or moving on. Good driving. The Eagle Talon is a combination of styling and technology at a very affordable price. Just ask race car driver Tom Bull of Bull's Jeep Eagle.
Strap yourself into an Eagle Talon at Bull's Jeep Eagle today, and we'll see you in the winner's circle.
And at the Thompson International Speedway, there was a 25-lap race called the Clash. By invitation only, the best modified drivers in the country were assembled. And Tony Hirschman gave Rick Fuller a run for the money. Till Hirschman was the man that dominated. It took down a victory worth $6,000 in the Clash at the Thompson Speedway.
The NASCAR Modified Tour this year was cut down from 27 races to 24. Next year they're talking about maybe 15 to 18. Smaller races, bigger purses, the way to go?
In one way, it's the way to go, the more money part. But if you're doing it as a tour, I don't like going back to the same track, you know, 5 times a year. I could see 2 races, 3 races a year, maybe tops. So I like the more races, the better for me. You know, it's harder on the team because you got a lot more wear and tear in the cars, maintenance, and it's a longer season. But I wish we could run 30-some, 40 races a year, because once you get so involved in it, you're running 20-some races, you might as well go all the way. If you're going to do it, you know, if you're going to make money in it and get exposure, you might as well run more races, you know. A lot of guys run the Tour, plus they run a lot of their weekly tracks yet. It's just the more races you run, I think the sharper you stay. And just, if you got the cars and the equipment, you got to use them. If they're sitting around, they're not really doing you much good.
If Tony Hirschman gets a call and says, we have a Busch Grand National waiting for you down here in North Carolina, how long before you could pack up the kids and wife and move down south?
Well, I don't know. Myself, I could probably move out the next day. I'd be down there. You know, the wife and the kids, we'd have to see what it would take to move them down, you know, what time of the year it would be or whatever. But if that's what it takes, I'd probably do it, you know, right now, because, you know, to do the whole southern deal, you got to get down here in the south. You know, that's the only way. That's where everybody's at, and that's where you got to be. But it'll be a little rough leaving home. You know, grew up there and all them years, and you know, it'd be hard leaving that area. But if I'd have to move south and come racing to make a living down south, I'd do that, and then eventually probably move back when my career was over.
One of the big drawing cards for the Busch Grand National is the fact that they run next to the Winston Cup drivers, and they run on the super speedways. Now, does Tony Hirschman have any super speedway experience?
No, not really. It's the biggest track we were on. I think probably about everybody in the Tour was beat New Hampshire, a 1-mile track. And it's really nice to run them big tracks where you get the feel of the drafting and speed like that. You know you can pass if you got the car. There's nobody really going to hold you back. But we're looking just probably in the Busch deal next year to mix up the schedule, a little bit of north and south, try to get on some of the mile and a half tracks to make me eligible, that if we wanted to make a run at it, I can go to Daytona and I'll be eligible. Other than that, for next year, I know they won't let me go to Daytona because I have no experience on the big tracks.
Tony, we were talking about the comparison of the Busch cars and modified cars. Mike McLaughlin said it's awful tough to jump back and forth, but yet he did a real good job at it. If you have to, could you do as good a job?
I probably could. I know I could do a good job in the modifieds. You know, he just really got it adapted to that Busch car real well. You know, and I talked to Mike about it, and he told me basically what the differences were. But I don't know. For me to run a Busch car and do as good a job as he did right off the bat, I don't know if that can happen or not. But Mike, you know, he has a good feel for cars, you know, and he did real well there. And plus, he did get to run on some of the bigger tracks already, and you know, a year or two ago with a Busch car and a full-body car, so that helped him out a lot. But if it comes to that next year, I got to run some Busch races, and we don't come up with a big sponsor to take care of the Busch car, and we got to run some modified races. If we don't sell all our modified cars, we might have to do that, hit a couple of the high-dollar modified shows, put a little bit of money back into the Busch effort.
Does Tony Hirschman have any heroes in racing?
Heroes. They're really, you know, anybody that does real good in the Winston Cup, Busch Series, modifieds or whatever, you know, they're all my heroes, I could say. You know, you just look up to guys like that could do such a good job. And a lot of people, they look at it from the grandstands or whatever. It's not really that hard to run as good as in the modified like we do. You know, you can't take things like that for granted. It's really tough, you know. It's going to be hard for me to start all over at the bottom again and work our way back to the top, especially when we know we can run and time in the front and run and win races in the modifieds. But if you want to move up in racing, you're going to have to, at some point in your career, you're going to have to take that chance and make that step once again.
As we said, modified drivers, they look to the Busch Grand National like the Busch Grand National look to the Winston Cup. 5 years from now, does Tony Hirschman have a dream where he wants to be?
Alternate dream. Probably winning the Daytona 500. You know, that's probably the biggest race, you know, right now.
Well, Tony Hirschman is a quiet driver off the track, but on the track, he certainly is a demon. The next few years, look for Tony Hirschman and the Vecchio team to be making big noise, whether it's in the modified or the Busch Grand Nationals.
There's no question about it that Tony Hirschman has been a welcome asset on the NASCAR Winston Modified Tour. The quiet man has really made things happen, and he will be a major asset as he moves on to the Busch Grand National Circuit, if he makes that transition. You know, a lot of drivers are talking about doing the same thing for the Modified Tour. Tommy Bowles is looking to move on, so is Mike Stefanik, and both of those teams already has cars. We'll see what's in store for the 1991 season. Well, that's going to kind of wrap things up for this edition of Race Week. On the next edition of Race Week, we'll be taking a look at a driver who has been where Tony Hirschman wants to be. We'll see how strong and how well he run after one season of competition, doing both the Busch Grand National and NASCAR Winston Modified Tour special events. All of that and more will be coming at you on the next edition of Race Week. Until then, we say take care and keep warm, as we'll be back next week with more great racing coverage here on Race Week. Bye-bye now.
Catch the hockey stars of tomorrow when two of the top